becomes very unfeasible. Now we get into the juicy parts, which is going to be the actual gameplay that's shown for the battle map and the campaign. Where, okay, cool, we're presented to this. One thing you'll see is that it's very much not polished. A lot of the textures are still rough. They're just kind of playing with the look and feel. So what can we derive from this? Well, obviously the map is gorgeous. There is some level of verticality that is present here in terms of, there's ramps joining big wide plateaus. It goes fairly high. Up to the left here, it looks like there's maybe 4 or 5 different levels. But beyond that, it doesn't look like there is another visual level present for aircraft to be fighting in. There's nothing separating it there, so presumably everything is kind of in the same sphere of combat that we've seen from all past Total War titles, and again, that maybe hints at the fact that this aerial combat is really not baked into this kind of map, and it's like, call-ins that you do. Anyway, so that's kind of the level design itself. You also see this center structure here that they seem to be fighting over. That's presumably a capture point. I hope that Warhammer 40k here leans a lot more into objective-based play, and I hope that they lean into what they've been doing in the Warhammer 3, the fantasy title, when it comes to more dynamic battles, getting supplies, requisitions, upgrading your battle map. You can imagine getting turrets and all that stuff in 40k, getting ammo resupplies, or perhaps building up to call in reinforcement troops or all that stuff. So I really hope they lean a lot more into this objective-based gameplay. Other stuff we can see here is thinking, well, what are the size of the units to expect? What is the scale of this Warhammer 40k world? And I pulled out some indicative units. So you can see here, a little squad of Terminators is about 5 guys. It gets even larger when you look at some of the Orcs or the Imperial Guard forces. This looks like a platoon, maybe 30 to 50 men. Same thing with the Orcs. So again, it seems like basically the size that you would have seen from Warhammer Fantasy in the recent Total War titles in terms of the scale. Same thing goes with the vehicles. They all seem to be kind of single entities in and of themselves. I was hoping we would see something scaled up even larger where you would control like a squadron of tanks, like 3 of them, but it seems like we're getting a pared down, something closer to like a company of heroes. Speaking of company heroes, we might as well get down into the nitty-gritty of the actual combat. So there's a little bit of up-close gameplay that we see here. I was trying to get an understanding of how is this going to play out. So there's a couple things that come into mind is, well, unit sizes, you can see that here. Again, it gets down to the level of maybe 5, 10 troops that you're commanding. What else do we see here? Well, there is a cover system. This is something, obviously, that past Total War titles have kind of skirted. Cover's never really been that important, but now in this title, obviously, it is vastly important. So how does this work? Well, we don't really know. You can see here that there are some barricades. Troops seem to be positioned next to them, and maybe we have something like past Total War titles, where when there is like a barricade, you can tell your troops to essentially dock themselves and fire from that position. Maybe that's the system that are going down, but I would prefer something that's closer to Company of Heroes where there's kind of cover, and then you move your unit to that area, and they dynamically disperse to take organic cover around here. That's the flexibility and realism that I hope we see that's enabled by the Warfare engine. Again, I did get a good sense of it here. I'm hoping this is a key part, but again, can't really make much of this. I really hope that they don't do the things that we've seen in recent Total War titles, which is when there's a fence and your troops kind of move up to it, they just interact with it and it explodes. But that's a legacy of an old engine. Other stuff you see here with this close-up view of combat is there is this destruction in the building. Again, this is something they hinted at Warfare being able to do, that you have dynamic building destruction, and once it's destroyed, you can still interact with it, take cover, presumably go inside, things like that. Again, I'm keeping an eye out for units that might be garrisoning structure, or structures that have openings, and you can kind of see an opening here, but again, this could be ornamental, and I don't see anyone actually in the building, so that's unfortunate. Now, in terms of kind of the UI down here, we can't really see what's going on. Obviously, there is melee. You can probably choose to be ranged. It seems like there is some sort of